Hey guys, Rose from Echo here. For today's video, we're going to go over creating a job file that contains prompts for information as well as automatic serialization. For this example, we'll assume I'm setting up for a tray of 4 parts. All right, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to program in a motion for my Z height. So when you're setting up, once you get your focal height, you can program that in as an object. So the first thing you do when you run the program, the first thing that happens is the laser system will go to the correct focal height. And the focal height you can get by using the focal stick provided to you by Mecco, or if you know the height of your part plus fixturing, you can home the system and move it that specific amount. All right, so to program it in, this is our automation tool. And we'll choose linear motion, add, and now we have an object in here for our Z height. So what we'll do to get our values, over in our motion manager, you want to click on your Z axis, okay? And in our linear motion object, we'll right click, go into the properties. First, we'll assign our axis. And for the move mode, you'll want to make sure you choose move to an absolute position. Okay, and then in the move section, you'll record your current position. This is based on where the focal height is for your part. So for me, I'm at negative 0.5 millimeters. Okay, that's for our move section. Next, we'll look at the initial speed. To get these values, click the right arrow, and you'll copy these values for your rates and speeds over to here. So for my initial speed, we're at 5 millimeters per second. For the acceleration, we are at 10. Slew speed, we are at 8. And decelerate, we're at 10. So hit apply. Okay, and now that the first thing it will do when I run the program is go to that position. Okay, so now we'll go ahead, we'll create our objects for our layout. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to import my Mecco logo. So this is my import tool. Click that, navigate to the folder you have your file in, and select it. One thing to note, make sure you choose the correct extension, otherwise your files won't show up. You may want to utilize the force close all open polygons button if you have a graphic where any nodes are not completely connected. If you use that, it'll take any open nodes and connect the 2 closest ones together. Okay, so there's my logo. We'll go ahead, we'll size this. If I right click on my object and hit dimensions or F5 for the hotkey, it'll bring up this tab. Now I can go to my size tab, make sure proportional is checked, and we'll make this just 5 millimeters tall. All right, so there's our logo. Next, I'll create a text object, and this is going to be for my heat code. All right, so we have that. We'll do the same thing. We'll size it. For this, we'll make it 3 millimeters tall. Okay, we'll throw this over here. And now, in my properties, if we navigate to the source tab, right now it says use current string. But what I want to do is I want to set this object up to prompt for the heat code whenever the system is run. So we'll change this to supply string at start. And for my justification, I'm going to center justify that. So if your string is longer or shorter, the position won't change. Hit apply, and now that object is ready to go. Okay, next we'll make another object. This one will be for our serial number. So I'll type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Add that there. Now in my tree, I'm going to rename this and call it serial number. Okay, so we're gonna do the same concept. We'll go to our properties, navigate to the source tab, and for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a prompt for the first serial number, and then I'm going to have it automatically increment after it's supplied that starting value. So we'll choose Serialize with supplied start value. Okay, and again, we'll center justify this. And now under the increment section, since I'm going to have a tray of 4 parts for this group, I want this to increment by 4 because the other ones will pull the value and add based on the starting value. So we'll get to that in a second. And apply, and that should be good as well. So we'll move this up. Now I'm gonna just pretty this up a little bit, make sure I got my size for that. Okay, so now I'm going to align these. In my tree, my object tree, I'm going to hold Control and click the heat code and serial number. These are the 2 objects that I want to move. Then I'm going to select my Mecco logo because that's the object I'm going to align it to. And down here, this is our align tool. So we'll click that. And I want to center justify these. Now I like to hit preview before I apply, just to make sure I have it all correct. And that is good. All right, so we'll just move this up here. And now we'll go ahead, we'll throw some laser settings on these because we're gonna take these objects and we're gonna duplicate them. So first I'm going to highlight all of my objects. Now the material I'm working with is anodized aluminum. So in my profiles, I'm going to choose my anodized aluminum profile, right click on that and apply to group. Okay, so that applied my power, frequency, and speed. Next, I'm going to edit the fill for these. So under the Properties tab, our Fill tab, we'll add fill. And for anodized aluminum, it's 0.04 millimeters for our spacing, and the style will be crosshatch. Okay, one last thing to check. Down here, we're going to mark our fill, and these are good to go. Okay, so that part's done. Now we're gonna take this and we're gonna duplicate it. So I'm going to highlight all of my objects here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the nudge feature to move this over with, we'll say, a 5 millimeter gap in between. So I have everything selected. The first thing I'll do is I'll check my dimensions. I want to look at the size and see what our width is. So for the sake of using even numbers, we'll change this to just 25 millimeters wide. Now that will change the size a little bit, but that's okay. All right, so now we're at 25 millimeters wide. I want a 5 millimeter gap in between. So under my nudge tab, I'm going to move this 30 millimeters to the right, and if I choose apply to duplicate, it will take all of those and just push them over. All right, so now I have a second group. Now the heat code, I don't want to have 4 prompts asking for that heat code, so we're going to change the code on this object to pull the string from the initial one, that prompt for the information. So on this object, we'll right click, go to our properties, and under the source tab, rather than supply string at start, we're going to change that to custom string. Okay, this gives you the ability to do a little bit of, you can do some custom commands. In the user's manual on page 6-72, there's a list of different specifiers with the commands and what those functions do. So we're going to insert a string from another object where I equals a 0-based object index. So the command for the specifier is %e, I. In WinLase, and this is case sensitive, so we'll do %e, I is going to be the object number from the tree that we want to pull from. So we're going to pull from this heat code, which in our object tree, it's the third object down. Now this is a 0-based starting value, so this is object 0, this is object 1, and this is object 2. So we're gonna enter 2. Apply. And now this object will pull the string from this one. Okay, so now we have to edit our serial number. Under our source tab, again, we have serialize with supplied start value. We're going to change this to custom string. And the next function that we're going to use is %i, p, v. So %i is going to insert the string from the other object. P is going to be the object number that we are referencing, and then v is the number that we want to add to that value. All right, so %lowercase I, comma, we're going to pull the value from the initial serial number. So this is object 0, 1, 2, 3. And then we'll add 1 to that. Hit apply, and you can see now that that changed. Okay, so these ones are ready to go. Now I'm going to do the same concept. I'm going to grab this group and I'm going to duplicate it and move it down. So under my dimensions, the nudge tab, first we'll check out the size. We're at about 14 millimeters tall. So 14 plus 5 is 19. We'll move that down. And now we have that object moved right below it. Now I'm actually going to take this one, I'm going to move it over here just to keep things in order. So on my nudge, we're at 25, we'll move that minus 30. Okay, and now we just have to fix our serial number. So we'll go to the properties. Under the source tab, we're going to change that 1 to a 2. Because remember, this value is ultimately pulling from the initial starting value. It's the third object, so we need that to be 2 higher than the initial. All right, and we'll do that one more time. Dimensions, nudge. We'll take all of this, move it over to the right 30 millimeters. Hit apply to duplicate, and we will adjust our serial number. Source tab, change that from a 2 to a 3. Hit apply. And now our job file should be ready to go. Okay, so now we're ready to run. Up here, this is our run process button. So we'll select that. And now we can enter the string for our heat code. We'll call this XYZ. Now it's asking for our initial serial number. Since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the screen, I'll change that so you can see it change. We'll call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones. Okay, so now on the screen you can see it hasn't changed yet. If you want to preview what it's going to look like when it starts marking, right here is a refresh button, so you can select that. Okay, so now this is what it's going to look like, and we can go ahead and run the system. Okay, and then you would unload, load the new part, hit go again, and continue that process.